YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with updated power rankings after the NFL draft. It's that interesting time of the year where it feels like every single team got better, but not every team can move up in the rankings. Let's take a look at what I got. And the team that is unfortunate to come in at number 32 after the draft is the Cleveland Browns. And unfortunately, I feel like that's quite clear right now, even though they got better through the draft. They have talent. The defense should be solid. Mason Graham in the mix with Myles Garrett should be really fun. And offensively, I like the running game. Judkins and Sampson, that looks awesome, but still issues at quarterback, still issues on the offensive line. Hopefully better than it was last year. Still issues at the receiver position, so it's kind of a lot of the same problems. They're still looking out for the long-term future. So the draft was solid. They got good players, kind of focused on the same few positions. So it feels like right now they are sitting as the worst team, unfortunately, in the NFL. Three teams in the next tier: the Saints, the Titans, and the Giants. And the Saints coming at 31 mainly is due to the quarterback situation, right? They have Tyler Shuck they bring in. Is he going to start? Is Rattler going to start? Derek Carr is apparently not good to go. So that's a bit of a situation there. I'd imagine they drafted the older, more experienced, more pro-ready and a weaker quarterback class type guy to possibly start right now. That's Tyler Shuck, but he'll have his growing pains. He'll have his turnovers. He'll have some issues there. Good arm, prototypical size. A little afraid to take sacks, so kind of throws the ball up for grabs. So we could see some of those moments. And they do have talent, but a lot of their talented guys over the years, especially on defense, they're aging, they're declining a little bit. But offensive line still a work in progress, even though they bettered it. But mainly the quarterback situation will put them at 31. In comparison to number 30, the Tennessee Titans, who were the worst team in football last year, they had Cam Ward, and he's going to have his growing pains. He's going to have his hero ball, bad mistake moments, but what he did his whole career, elevate any team he was on, give them life, win them football games, is no matter what the defense gave up, he can put them in position to win football games, and that's something the Titans didn't have before. Maybe it's been some time since they've had that. So he gives them life, and he makes them better. But again, there'll be growing pains. But I do like that they add at positions of need, receiver, even right before the draft with Tyler Lockett. They draft a couple. They add an edge rusher, Oladejo. Defense already has a lot of studs on it. So, again, they'll be a little hot and cold, I think, a little inconsistent, but they most definitely get better. The Giants at 29, who might have had the best draft out of anybody in the league, defensive line alone can win them some football games. That might be an elite defensive line, adding Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander to already, Dexter Lawrence, maybe the best in football. And then obviously you have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. So it's a pretty good group there, and the defense is kind of coming together. And again, the defensive line therefore defense can win them games alone. Offensively, still questions at the quarterback position, so that's kind of somewhere where maybe the Titans have the Giants beat. But Russell Wilson brings the knowledge and probably better situation than they were in the past. They had Scadaboo. The running game could be pretty strong on top of Tyrone Tracy. Malik Neighbors is going to continue to grow. So it's really all about the quarterback position and maybe offensive line as well. I do like the steal in Marcus Bowe. We'll see if he gets on the field early on. But Giants did a hell of a job in the draft. It's still kind of a work in progress. How is the quarterback play going to be? Kind of got a big tier of teams next. All these teams were so tight for me, but the Jets are next. They have talent, right? What's going on with Breece Hall in the running back situation, though? And they have a star talent in Garrett Wilson. Does he have enough help other than that in terms of weapons? And then, I'm not a huge Justin Fields guy. I think their running game could be pretty strong, but can he distribute the ball? Can he get the ball to Garrett Wilson, Mason Taylor consistently enough? And then defensively, they have a lot of talent. A lot on this coaching staff for me, because a lot of people raving about what they brought in, but, in terms of Aaron Glenn, they good defensive mind. They run a lot of predictable man coverage, where in the past, under Ulbrich, Salah, they do a really good job coaching up the defense and just really keeping it unpredictable, mixing up the coverages. So they do have talent there, though, but I wonder if they're still a work in progress. Defense can win them football games. The passing game is the question. They do upgrade the offensive line, adding Armand Membo. The Raiders are next. I still feel like the Raiders are one of those teams with the most holes in football. There are spots throughout their roster, a lot on defense, where it's, even spots they added, like receiver, they add Besh, they get better there. But compared to the rest of the league, they're very, very thin. Corner, linebacker, these positions. You could argue other positions as well. So that's kind of a problem, but they do have Geno Smith. They do have Ashton Jeanty now. They can win games with the running game, which could open things up for the passing game. And they have star talent like Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, if he's good to go post-injuries. So they can win games off flash, off star talent. But there are some holes throughout this roster, and that's kind of what this video is about, kind of evaluating that. And Seattle's next, and of course, Mike McDonald's going to have this defense balling, even though it does feel like essentially the same defense as last year. Of course, there are small differences here and there. He'll have the defense playing at a pretty high level. Offensively, how will Darnold be? We saw one pretty damn solid year of Sam Darnold in Minnesota with that great coaching and weapon situation. Will he be the same? Did the weapons essentially get worse? They do improve the interior offensive line throughout the draft. How improved is it, though, is kind of the question. This offense will rely on the run game and the play action pass game. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, you can't play from behind. It's a problem. So I think they'll rely on defense for the most part. Panthers next, which Bryce Young took that leap last year. They add Tet McMillan to that mix. They have a pretty strong running game. I'm not worried about the offense. The defense was horrendous last year, but they did add a lot of pieces. You look at free agency and now the draft, but how much of an impact right away will these guys be? Scorton, kind of the big addition throughout the draft on defense. I love it. I love the pick. 20-year-old, a little inconsistent, more of an upside guy. He's going to make an impact right away, but just how much better will they? I hope they're better on defense because it was pretty brutal last year. So they're at 25, but a team to watch for the future. Then the Jags at 24. Travis Hunter alone gives them a boost, right? Him and Brian Thomas Jr. going to be dynamic as long as Trevor Lawrence is healthy. Running game, they got a mixture of backs. They had Tootin in there. Offensive line, some questions there still. Is it going to be? It's not going to be the weakest in football, but it's definitely most definitely not going to be the strongest. And defensively, I know they've added pieces throughout free agency in the draft, but it feels like they're kind of just replacing guys. Even on the offensive line, or just other positions, it felt like at first glance, it looks like they're getting better, but they're kind of just replacing guys that were already pretty decent, guys that more so fit Liam Cohen's offense, which is good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's definitely good. It's just how much better are they actually, and is Trevor Lawrence going to stay healthy? But they could be somewhat sneaky. It's going to be an explosive team, again, if Trevor Lawrence is healthy because Travis Hunter was the best player of the draft. I think he has elite, near-future potential at the receiver position. He can help him at corner as well, and on top of Brian Thomas Jr. should be a lot of fun. And these 6 teams were kind of in the next tier where you could flip these teams around. They're so close to me. The Patriots, I'm tempted to move up higher because I'm a big Vrabel guy. I'm a big Drake May guy. That Vrabel alone and this new coaching staff alone will boost this team, but the additions they made, how much better they get across the offensive line. They did what they needed to do in the draft. They had Will Campbell, but speaking of the draft, they knocked it out of the park. They had Travion Henderson. He'll split with Stevenson, but the running game becomes more explosive. It becomes better. Kyle Williams at receiver on top of them adding Stephon Diggs. It's still not the greatest. It's the same thing with the offensive line. It's still, and that's why it's tough to put them ahead of some of the other teams here because it's still, those aren't the greatest things in the world, but it's definitely night and day, much better than last year. I already liked the defense, but they added, obviously some pieces on defense that were great within the draft as well. So every year I pick one single, my sneakiest team, and they, usually outperform everyone's expectations. They even outperform my expectations. The Patriots and maybe the Colts, those are right now leading. It's too early to make that pick, but those 2 teams right now for me are leading the way where they could crush everyone's expectations and exceed, mine as well. But the Patriots do come at 23, but I did like what they did. The Bears at 22, and then the Bears could also be sneaky just because they bring in Ben Johnson, the offense. They have weapons. If Caleb Williams hits that stride and becomes who people thought he was going to be, they could just like that be very, very good, right, on offense, be that explosive on offense. But, yeah, the draft was an interesting one for them because they got good players. Overall, I liked their draft. It's just like, did they actually get better? Like a lot of these teams, the Patriots did what they needed to do. They had a massive hole at left tackle. They had Will Campbell. You look at receiver, Kyle Williams. You look at Travion Henderson at running back, for an example, where the Bears, they add good players. They got players that I like. It's just, for the most part, it's kind of replacing where they are already pretty decent. Loveland over Kmet, and he might not even be replacing Kmet because Loveland plays a lot almost as a big receiver. So, but essentially, if he's playing in the slot or he's playing out wide, he's taking snaps away from somebody else, whether it's tight end Cole Kmet or those guys. They had Luther Burden, super explosive, could fit right into that slot role because he's a slot receiver, for Ben Johnson. But you can't have all these guys getting snaps at the receiver position. If Loveland's playing out a big outside, then that puts Odunze, maybe on the bench, not at all times, but, losing those reps. Hard to imagine. Maybe the long-term future, maybe DJ Moore is not part of it, but he's just so talented, it's hard to imagine he gets a massive snap cut. So my point is they added good players, but they added in spots where they didn't really need to improve to go up in the power rankings. Everyone said it. They needed to improve the running game. They didn't really do that. They needed to improve at left tackle. Maybe they did it. Are they going to put Trapelo or Darnell Wright there, who were much better at right tackles and right tackle in their careers? So it kind of feels like, edge still the same. I do like adding Shamar Turner, who will be a rotation piece at defensive tackle. There was some talk about them adding a safety to fit more of Dennis Allen's defense, and we didn't see that. So it doesn't mean that, I think they had a pretty good draft, and they added some really good players. And I do like that Ben Johnson's going out there and getting guys that fit him. Like, I'm not worried about what the last guys added, even if they're these big names. I'm getting my guys. But so they might have got better for Ben Johnson's offense, but they're kind of the same in terms of the last time we talked in terms of our power rankings. So they'll come at 22, but that's kind of what they're banking on to be great this year, is Caleb Williams just really hitting that stride and that offense being that explosive, which it could be because the weapons that he has, and they have Ben Johnson, but are they going to be like Lions level? That's kind of what they're banking on right now. I think it's a little too soon, but they should be much better than they were last year. The Colts at 21, the Colts are really sneaky. They got better throughout the entire offseason. And they did not have many needs at all. They had a stud, elite prospect tight end and Tyler Warren, perfect for that offense. It instantly elevates that offense that already has a collection of weapons at receiver. I love that receiver group. And they have one of the better backs in football in Jonathan Taylor. They had DJ Giddens to the mix. They badly needed a backup. They get one there. They have a solid offensive line. I actually think Daniel Jones is pretty underrated. If Anthony Richardson starts, I'm going to bump them down a bit from 21. But Daniel Jones, the Giants always make people look worse than they are. Daniel Jones, I think it's going to be pretty simplified. I think he fits Steichen's offense. Defensively, they added some major guys in free agency, but we talked about then then on defense, in the draft, they did pretty good as well. They had another playmaking corner in Justin Wally. I love me some JT Tuimoloau, super instinctive, impacts the game in multiple ways. The Colts are feeling a little more complete. That could be a sneaky team like the Patriots, Colts. One of these teams is going to make the playoffs. Even though where I rank them here, I'm not going to these aren't playoff predictions, right? I'm going to make some bold predictions once we get there. Steelers at 20, and they'd be a lot higher if I was confident with their quarterback situation. We're still waiting for them to get a quarterback here, and that's still a massive problem, a bigger problem than it's ever been for them. So that kind of weighs them down a little bit. But, the defense is ridiculous. It's very good. It's very talented. It probably is better than it was last year. So the defense could win games for them alone. And then they had Caleb Johnson. Love that. I think he'll be their leading rusher. I think he'll be very impressive. So they're good. It's just quarterbacks weighing them down right now. So I can't just sit here and say they're going to get, like we've been saying, they're going to get a quarterback. We're still waiting. Cardinals get a bit of a boost. I think they had one of the better drafts in the entire league. Their defense could be nasty. That defense, and it was starting to be a problem last year just because Jonathan Gannon is such a good defensive coach, and he was really, really good, specifically disguising the blitz. It was just so unexpected. Teams weren't expecting it. They just, it caused problems from the start in games, which is just being unpredictable, and I love that. And now they actually have serious talent on defense, adding Walter Nolan, adding the corners that they added, led by Will Johnson, and they added Sweat in free agency. So I think the defense will be really good. Offense, you have playmakers, but you still have the questions on the offensive line. You still have questions at receiver other than Marvin Harrison Jr. Of course, they got other underrated guys that can play, but they still have some questions there, and they felt like they relied on their running game at times last year. So Kyler Murray's kind of a hot and cold player. So they're kind of the same on offense. It's kind of like they're going to be super good one week and they're going to be super underwhelming the next week. But the defense, it's actually way more of a defensive team. But they get a little bit of a boost because of the upgrades they got on defense. And the Falcons, it's really all on Michael Penix. because, I mean, wow, the improvements they made on defense in the draft. I mean, these are instant impact guys, too. Jalen Walker, James Pierce, Xavier Watts in the mix with Jesse Bates. I mean, there's a lot of takeaways there. This defense will create a lot of takeaways. So it's a team I want to move even higher because of that, but they're still pretty young. How much better will they be? I mean, they'll definitely be better on defense. I mean, the defensive coaching alone is actually better, too. Offensively, I mean, Penix is... he's talented, but is he going to be consistent? He looked pretty promising at the end of last year, but, I mean, they have some serious talent. Bijan Robinson, the running game is there. They have the weapons in the passing game. They have the offensive line. So this is a team that is right on the brink of being insanely explosive on both sides of the ball. We kind of just need to see them put it together. Hopefully, they're going to act young at times, right? That's kind of the problem. It's still, maybe going to take a little bit of time, but they're on the brink of being a insanely explosive team. Next group of teams, the Dolphins at 17, the Cowboys at 16. I kind of have them in the same boat. I think the Broncos have similar talent level as them, but the Cowboys and the Dolphins are in the same boat because they have injuries at quarterback position, but when they're back, when they're healthy, when they play a full season, they're pretty good, and they have weapons. Maybe the Dolphins' weapons are a little bit better, obviously. I like the Cowboys' offensive line better. Then defensively, both pretty decent. The Cowboys got some star talent on that defense, obviously. Micah Parsons, the corners are coming back healthy. They add Savone Revel into that mix. Eberflus, even though he's not the greatest head coach, I think it's a pretty good defensive coach. Dolphins had Kenneth Grant, one of my favorite players in the draft. So, I mean, these teams are pretty much in the same boat. Quarterback stays healthy, they're probably going to finish better than these ranks, but do they stay healthy? Are they full, if Tua's healthy, I feel like he's really good. Is Dak the same as what he was a couple years ago? And the Broncos next, I think in terms of roster talent level, they're kind of in the same boat with those teams, but really impressive, exceeded expectations last year. So, it's always interesting with these second-year quarterbacks for all of them. Do they take that next step and become even better and the whole offense becomes better, or does teams start the game plan for them a little more properly? So that's kind of the thing with the Broncos. Nick started to turn the ball over a little bit more down the stretch. They couldn't get anything going in the playoff game, so that's kind of what we're keeping an eye on there. Do teams start the game plan for them a little bit more? But they do get better at, running back, receiver technically, even though maybe they didn't get the guys that everyone wanted them to get, Amarian Hampton or Travion Henderson at running back. They get R.J. Harvey, who's going to be very explosive for them. They had Pat Bryant at receiver. So, honestly, maybe, again, compared to what people were saying they were going to do, maybe a little underwhelming, but they still get better. The cornerback duo with Surtain and Barron, probably going to be nasty, will be nasty. The defense will be very solid. So, yeah, got them in that 15 range for right now. And here are three teams, Texans, Bengals, Niners, who were kind of underwhelming last year. The Texans did not only make the playoffs, win a playoff game. I think we all kind of expected a little bit more from them, but and the offensive line is still a problem, right? Even though they add some pieces, they add pieces to the receiver position as well. It's still a little bit of a problem that could hurt them. That was kind of when they were underwhelming last year, when there was games where it's like, God, we wish there was more from Stroud. The offensive line was the issue, right? And it's obvious, and it could still be the issue, but they have weapons. They got a good quarterback. They got a good running back. Defensively, this could be one of the very best defenses in football. We saw that down the stretch of last season, the way they played, against the Chargers, against the Chiefs in the playoffs. It's a legit defense, and they could end up being a top-tier team because of that defense alone, and it's not like they don't have an offense. They have weapons on offense. And the Bengals are next, underwhelming last year because the defense was horrendous, and the defense could once again be horrendous, but they got to start a little bit better. It sounds like they're going to make some adjustments. We'll see what those are to be able to start better, to be able to prepare a little bit better. But the offense is going to be elite. The offense is going to be ridiculous. They'll be able to score points on anyone, and they do, bring in. It's a different type of defense, so it could be a little unpredictable, under Al Golden for opposing offenses. So the Bengals should be better than they were last year, but that defense is brutal. In the Niners, I think people, I've been ranking them pretty high, and people knock me for it because the way they finished and the guys they lost. But people forgot, they got to remember how injured they were last year. A lot of those guys that they lost were injured. McCaffrey, their star, like their best, most important player, was injured. Brandon Ayuk went down. He's going to come back. Obviously they've had some pieces, especially through the draft. More so defense. I do wonder how the offensive line will be on offense, but they're going to be able to run the ball no matter who's that running back. Really, obviously, they're better at McCaffrey. Purdy could distribute the ball. They still have Kittle. They still have Ayuk, Pearsall is ready to emerge. Defensively, they bring in Robert Saleh, which instantly upgrades that defense once again. And they added to the defensive line. Could we expect a ton from Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West right away? No, we can't really expect a ton, but it instantly upgrades their defense. The interior defensive line got a major boost. So this team is one of those teams, the way it is coached, and especially more so now on defense, that really no matter whoever's in there, they're kind of going to exceed what they say, what it says on paper, but they do have star talent at the same time, and they're getting healthier. So I can see the Niners finishing better. The power rankings really aren't my predictions and where teams will finish. I'll probably have them, there'll be less than 12. I have them ranked at 12. There'll be less than 12 teams alive in the playoffs, and I think they'll be one of them. We'll put it that way. So I think people are kind of sleeping on them right now. But I do still worry about the offensive line, even though they got some studs on it. Trent Williams, Pooney looked really good last year. The defense has a lot of young players, but they'll exceed expectations. One by one here, Buccaneers at 11. This is a pretty complete roster, looking pretty damn solid. They did lose Liam Cohen back-to-back years, losing an offensive coordinator, so that they kind of take a hit because of that. But man, they added corners, they added some edge rushers. I mean, maybe you wish they got a little bit better off the edge, but they added pieces. The secondary is looking a lot better. Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, receivers are loaded. Adding Ibuka to the mix. I mean, they're pretty damn balanced. They'll be able to run the ball. They'll be able to throw the ball. They won't be the best in football in those things. They're probably not the best in football in any category. I mean, they're up there in terms of run defense. The way this team stops the run in crucial situations, pretty damn impressive. But they got a pretty complete roster, and I think they'll be a similar team as they were last year. How they be affected by losing Cohen, but Godwin wasn't around at the end of last year. So, and they were like one mistake away from beating the Commanders, and who knows what would have happened. The Commanders won another game. The Buccaneers were a team that actually matched up pretty well with the Eagles, so who knows what would happen there. So, like the roster, how complete it is there at 11. Packers at 10, which maybe they were a little underwhelming for me last year because I expected more, but Jordan Love got injured, was playing injured, and they kind of, with their defense, they went head-to-head pretty well with the Eagles in the first round of that playoff game. They finally add a big-time receiver in Matthew Golden. I still think they'll use the collection of receivers. They'll rotate them a lot. But Love's got to take that step up. We know the running game is pretty solid. The offensive line's pretty solid. They got to stay healthy. Again, Love's got to take that step up. Defensively, they stepped up at the end of last year, but you still wonder how much pass rush will they have. What's the situation with Alexander? But a pretty solid, flashy team, very explosive team that could beat you in multiple ways. It's just kind of riding on Love. I thought Love, again, was he hurt all year? Starting the year with an injury in week 1 is not ideal. Is that a legitimate excuse? Or is he just underwhelming, with the inconsistency like he kind of was last year, in the playoff game, which they actually had a shot in. So for right now, they are going to stay at number 10. But a team I think could be a contender. Commanders at 9, maybe one of the best offenses in football, one of the more explosive offenses in football, but I worry about that defense. It's pretty bad. On paper, it's pretty bad. The edge rush position is still pretty brutal, and Dan Quinn's going to get more out of these guys than what it says on paper, but they'll give up some yards on the ground. It was really bad last year, and they're the same. They're the same there in the position, interior defense, not just defensive line. Guys probably could step up, obviously. I like what they got in the secondary, adding Amos to Lattimore and Sainer still, so they get a little better there. But offense will win them some games. Defense will lose in some games. How will teams adjust? We see it all the time with rookie quarterbacks going in their second year, but we see it with first-year coordinators as well. Look at Kingsbury with the Cardinals, look like a juggernaut team, and then kind of got figured out, got game plans. That's what I'm watching for. I'm optimistic that Jaden Daniels is good enough and this team is talented enough to keep going on offense, but what we're watching for with all these second-year coordinators or quarterbacks is, do teams adjust properly for them, and do they start to decline a little bit? Again, don't think it's going to happen with the Commanders, but it's something we're watching here. Wish the defense was a little bit better to put them in the top 8. Number 8, the Chargers get a massive boost for me. I mean, last year was the first year with that coaching staff. They drafted the entire staff, they drafted very well, and they exceeded expectations in their first year. This year, they're a very solid team on defense, very solid, and they're a very solid rushing attack. Offensive line was solid. Passing game was a little inconsistent, but we know they can throw the ball. It felt like it was because of drops and the lack of receivers. Now, another offseason, another draft. They knocked the draft out of the park. I thought they were big winners. I mean, to go out and get a star running back in Amarian Hampton that's perfect for that offense on top of Najee Harris, as good as J.K. Dobbins was last year, no team was going against the Chargers like, we got to stack the box, we got to be scared of this run offense, even though it was very good. Nobody was doing that, right? Now teams are going to fear this rushing attack, and then you add Trey Harris out there. He's got to stay healthy, but that is a perfect type of receiver. It's kind of what everyone thought Quinton Johnson was going to be. Not me, but Trey Harris was a round one talent, just had some injury questions. But teams are going to have to stack the box for that rushing attack. It's going to open things up for the passing attack. They added some receivers in there defensively. They had Caldwell. They badly need another interior defensive lineman to help stop the run. That's what that does. Really good coaching staff. Chargers are going to be damn good this year. I think they have a shot to win that division. I really do. It's going to be tough to top the Chiefs. Maybe no one's going to predict it. I'm thinking about it. I think the Chargers going to be that. They're going to be that solid. It's just they're still on the defensive line. You still could get a little bit better. I think the rest of the defense looks really good though. And offensively, got to stay healthy at receiver. But teams got to worry about McConkey now. You add Harris. You got to worry about that running game. You got a really good coaching staff. I don't know. I like the Chargers for this upcoming year. They get a massive boost in my power rankings. Number 7 is going to be the Minnesota Vikings, a very interesting team because on paper, you just look throughout the whole roster, this might be the best roster. It may, I think a lot of people would say it is. Maybe not everybody. A lot of people would say that roster is insane. I mean, it was good last year and how much better it is on paper right now. I can't remember the last time the Vikings had an offensive line like this. They just completed the last piece of the puzzle with Donovan Jackson. They have one of the best tackle duos, and now that interior is just loaded with the Colts guys they added in Donovan Jackson, of course. They had Jordan Mason. The running game's looking better. They had Felton to the receiver mix. Defensively, Flores always has that defense ball, and they had pieces all over the place. The defensive line looks absurd. Again, on paper, this is clearly top 3 on paper with the roster, but then you have the quarterback question. And I'll be optimistic with McCarthy, but we just don't know what we're going to get right now, so it's tough to rank them any higher in this, but it feels like they can win games with the passing game, the running game. It looks like they're going to have a lot better protection now. They can win with their pass rush defensive line. They were second stopping a run last year in all of football, and they're even better there now. You know they're going to have takeaways, so it's a very intriguing team, but for right now, I got them at number 7. Lions coming at number 6, another team that's just pretty loaded. They don't really have many holes, but a massive hole was off the edge, and they didn't really fill that. I mean, they're still got to hope that Hutchinson is the same and full go throughout the whole year, no setbacks, no injuries, to the same spot, or is he favoring a side? You always worry about with these guys, because if he goes down, that's a massive problem off the edge. But that's really their only hole. But also losing their coordinators, I don't think they'll miss Aaron Glenn all that much. I know he was a good, strong leader for that defense, but they ran too much man coverage for my liking. Offensively, they'll miss Ben Johnson, so they take a hit about that, for that. But if they went out and got a big time pass rusher in the draft, it'd have been tough to not move them up in these power rankings, but kind of essentially the same right now. Will they be the same without Ben Johnson? I think they're talented enough. They come in at number 6. 5, the Rams. I'm really excited about the Rams this year. Matthew Stafford, as long as he stays healthy. But Devontae Adams being added in that mix for them. And the Rams were good enough last year with the injuries they had early in the year to be able to bounce back. And they were good enough to beat the Eagles in the snow in Philly. That things didn't really bounce their way. They made mistakes. And I feel like they're even better this year. I think the defense is growing. Obviously, they're still a little weak at the linebacker position, but the young players they bring in always make an instant impact. And they got talent everywhere throughout their roster. They can win with the run. They can win with the pass. Feels like the offensive line's really come together now as they go into this season, hopefully stay healthy. So the Rams feel like a serious threat if they stay healthy. They're at number 5. Number 4, the Buffalo Bills. They get a boost from me, and you look at the haul they got in the draft, and even the first couple picks with Harrison and TJ Sanders, you can make, not everyone's going to agree with this, but you can make the case that there were better players available for them. Maybe some of those guys had injury concern, that's it. But they still get 2 really good players, and they got more than 2 really good players, but they got 2 really good players at the top, whether you agree there's better players available or not. They improve at massive positions of need. when they're already a contending, really good team. And then you go out throughout the rest of the draft. Landon Jackson's a great fit. He's going to make an instant impact whether he's starting or not. And they add some really solid quality depth that could end up playing. I mean, go down to Dorian Strong in the 6th round. That's a corner that can come in and play right away if you need him to. I mean, you hope it's Benford and Hairston and Johnson in the slot, but you have other guys that obviously can play. Deion Walker, brings you a run-stopping presence on running downs and nose tackles. So they went out and got players at big positions of need, and they just got better. The Buffalo Bills. So they already have an explosive offense led by Josh Allen, obviously. So, they just added Elijah Moore. That's a small thing. I think the main guys for that offense will be Shakir. Hopefully Coleman takes the next step, and Palmer, who they added, and they're pretty deep at receiver. They don't have like star players, not even close, really. Maybe Coleman has that upside. And Shakir's a really, really good slot receiver, but man, do they have depth. Curtis Samuel at depth for outside and the slot. Elijah Moore at depth for the slot. They got more than that, obviously, as well. So, team's really coming together. I got them at number 4. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I thought they had a really good draft, too, for them to get Josh Simmons, upgrade at left tackle. That's obviously fantastic. So the offensive line, maybe it won't be better at first. Maybe it's a little bit because they're moving Suamataia to left guard. Maybe a little bit of work in progress. Some of these young guys, whether I like Simmons a lot. I think he could end up being the best tackle from the class if he's healthy. Do they start more at first? Simmons coming off the injury. So I think it kind of will get better as playoff time comes around, which they know is most important. That's kind of where it was exposed a little bit more, obviously, in the Super Bowl this past year. So kind of the opposite here. They got better. They added some pieces on defense that I really like. I think Noah Williams specifically will make a big impact, but they had some guys on the defensive line. It just still, they have a collection of running backs. Again, Pacheco is going to be healthier next year. Still, how much better is this running game? They have a load of receivers. No star guy, though. Can they keep Mahomes protected? But kind of nitpicking here. We know it's going to. Kelsey, does he take another step down? But we know it's going to be a star, talented, elite, top tier team. I just feel like they belong at number 3 right now. And we'll show 2 and number 1. I got the Ravens at 2. They bring in a haul. And grading-wise, I thought the Chiefs got better value in the draft than the Ravens, but the Ravens bring in a long haul of players, and they barely had any needs. I thought they did a good job. They get a couple options in the offensive line. They need a free safety. I mean, I wasn't a massive Starks guy, but they get better. He fits in there, obviously, and playing with that defense is great. I mean, they had some sneaky players, too, throughout the entire... I mean, Buchanan, I could see him starting at linebacker. People will disagree, but I think that's a safe bet to be a decent line. Like, he's not going to be a great linebacker, but he's going to be a pretty decent linebacker, and he's a smart kid that you can plug and play, can make an impact. So, but Mike Green, a bigger one, I mean, that just brings sacks to the defense, something that the Ravens need more of consistently. And the defense was pretty... Believe it or not, the Ravens' defense was pretty brutal through an early stretch of last season. Then they kind of figured it out without Mike McDonald, a lot of young players they have on the team. They figured it out, and they're really good. So I think that can continue to rise up, go on. And I guess the only question is offense. If they do move on from Mark Andrews, kind of the tight end group, I feel like they have to keep Mark Andrews at this point. Tight end group kind of feels a little weaker than if they don't have him. But this is a loaded roster that is a pain in the ass to deal with every single Sunday. They're going to be a problem this year. And I got the Eagles at 1. Maybe it's me, but it's so difficult for me every single year to move the team that just won the Super Bowl off of 1. Of course, if it felt like their roster was not belonging at 1 or they got significantly worse, then I'd be able to move them off 1, but it's just not the case here. They're fresh off a Super Bowl. They're still maybe the most talented team. Maybe you could argue they got a little worse. They lost guys, throughout free agency, but I think they knocked out of the park with the draft. They added guys to play off the edge. They got guys to play linebacker. They got guys to play on the defensive line. Ty Robinson's a really good Milt Williams replacement. Not that he's going to be him. Andrew Makuba is the most perfect C.J. Gardner-Johnson replacement. He's going to make an impact. So, they had pieces everywhere for this team, and it's just still the team to beat, right? So you got to put them at number 1. But we got some rosters that are looking pretty damn complete right now. How much better they are getting this offseason. And there's some teams even ranked. You wouldn't say the Chiefs are up. They're close, but I think there are more complete teams. But they're just so talented, so star-studded that they're up there. A team like the Rams, they're not complete, but man, they got talent everywhere as well. But Again, Chargers got themselves a good boost for me. I really like what they did. One of the better drafts. I think there was better drafts in terms of like value, like looking at my board, and even though they got good value, but for already a playoff contending team to kind of come in and in their first 3 picks, just get that star running back, get that star receiver if healthy. And yes, I think Trey Harris is a star receiver if healthy. And get that stud nose tackle. The biggest positions of needs, and just getting those big time players, and they did well throughout the rest of the draft as well. So that team really stood out for me post draft and power rankings. But this is always tough because every team got better, right? But not every team can move up. So it's always a little tricky. And I like doing the tiers because you could kind of see what teams are so close that I could change at any given time. They're so tight. There is not much splitting them up. Maybe the draft classes play too much of a part in it. And then we'll do these again when we get a little closer to the season, but we'll have a lot more predictions. When the schedule is released, I like to do way too early week 1 pick'ems. That'd be a lot of fun. Kind of more draft recap videos. Maybe you want to do another undrafted free agent video. There's still some good undrafted free agents available. I'm kind of waiting for them to sign. So we got you guys covered. Like, subscribe to notifications on. It's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.